Solo Acoustic Musician. A Practical How-To Guide. Chapter 1: Always be on time. You always gotta be on time, an hour ahead of everything. You always gotta be prepared. Beanie Siegel. I think the importance of always being on time was instilled in me when I was a kid. It was always part of the program with my parents, teachers, and other influential adults in my life. As an adult, I have to admit that everything they were telling me about punctuality was true. I believe it is an important part of being a professional and taking my gig seriously. Promptness is essential to many important achievements in life, and starting out my gigs by running late is not in my playbook. Being on time can also be a measure of someone's sincerity and commitment to a project or a gig with you, so keep that in mind if you book yourself on shared gigs with other musicians. A shared gig can be one where each Sam takes a turn to play a set. My usual practice is to be on the site of the gig 1 hour before my starting time, especially if it is the first time I'm playing a new location. Over the years, several places have actually called me when it was 10 after the hour that I would usually arrive, wondering where I was. I have answered my cell phone only a few blocks away to explain to them that the traffic and weather had delayed my arrival. It was nice to know that they had taken notice of the fact that I was punctual. That made me feel like I was doing the right thing simply by always being on time. I have been known to tell my friends and other musicians that I would rather be early than run late and then arrive in a stressful state after trying to get there. Consistency is a big word in business, so if you can make arriving on time an important part of your process, people will notice your work ethic. Have you ever been on your way to a gig and run into heavy traffic due to an accident, or the holiday traffic associated with seasonal tourists? In reality, I only need about 10 to 15 minutes to set up all of my gear. But situationally, I may have to accommodate my schedule due to traffic, weather, parking situations, and load-in distances. For example, you might have to park in a parking garage down the street and walk for 5 to 10 minutes to get to the venue. Or you might have to bring your equipment from the parking garage to the 10th floor of a big hotel by elevator. These things can add up to set me back and cause me to arrive on the job site with minimal time to set up. It is just a great reason to always leave the house a little early. I have also noticed that it consistently takes a lot longer to get to the gig than to get home afterward. This is most likely because of traffic density due to the time of day. There are a lot fewer cars on the road coming home late at night. I keep things in my van to occupy my time if I am too early. In case I anticipate extra traffic due to the 4th of July or some other holiday or event, then happen to arrive very early because it doesn't materialize, I bring a book to read. I also bring my clipboard and calendar with me, to make notes and do work while I am waiting. I might send out some texts or emails from my phone in that spare time. Sometimes I am able to book some gigs right there in my van while I am passing the time before I can load in and set up. Depending on the location of the gig, this can also be a good time to walk around and look for another place to play. Sometimes, though, I just enjoy the location. For example, I play a steady Sunday evening gig on the beach at sunset in Clearwater Beach, Florida, and the traffic on the bridge leading there can really vary. I give myself plenty of time and often get there really early. But finding parking can be an issue. So if I am really early, I can get a snack at the place I play and hang out on the beach until it's time to set up. Clearwater Beach is a busy beach town, and in the past I have walked around when I was early and found new places to play. It just depends on my mood and what I feel like doing with that spare time. I will say this: I would rather be early than be stuck on the bridge for an hour, and then have to drive around looking for parking. That really would be a very stressful situation to have to endure. There have been times when I am early to my destination and a festival or event is right down the street from my gig. I will take a walk to see the live bands and check out the vendors. I have made some new musician friends this way. I have also met some musicians who I had heard of, but never actually met in person, even though we had both been playing some of the same places for years. Many of us are already friends on Facebook, though, and so it is nice to have a random encounter with them in person. When I book a gig with a venue owner or manager, we are basically entering into a contractual agreement with set parameters. They are going to pay me to provide a service and to play for a certain amount of time, and that gig has both a start time and an end time. This is just another reason why it is important to always be on time. It is also important to fulfill the contract by not stopping early. I have seen owners point to their watch or the clock on the wall when a musician stops playing early. I am talking about less than 5 minutes before the agreed finish time, which doesn't seem like that much, but it is a business arrangement and some owners are not laid back about a performer finishing early on a gig. A manager once confided in me about another solo acoustic musician who was constantly showing up about 15 minutes after they were supposed to begin playing. She said she really liked the musician and thought he was very talented, but after the third and fourth time he showed up late, she quit booking him. I can understand her position, and I know she must appreciate the fact that I am always on time. It's just another example of how people who are paying you are making mental notes about how you operate. Even when I don't notice it, I have to remember that they are paying attention to what I am doing on the gig. I knew a band once that actually broke up fighting over being on time. Surprisingly, the main culprit was the drummer, which I found ironic because the drummer is in charge of the time. He constantly arrived at gigs at the time the band was supposed to start playing. I opened up for them once and the whole band's backline. The backline will usually consist of a drum set, amps for the guitars, bass, and keyboards, and microphones in direct boxes, and is usually provided by the host band, the event organizer, or the sound man who also provides the PA for a concert, was set up before I started my set, except for the drums. When I was done with my 1-hour set and it was time for them to kick off their show, their always be on time 13 drummer was literally just pulling his truck up to the curb in front of the building. I could feel the tension and embarrassment through the other guys' faces and body language. I am sure they were extremely stressed out, and that can't be a fun way to start your show, feeling like that. Over time it created great dissension amongst the band members, and ultimately was the catalyst for their demise. It is hard enough to keep a band together without extra problems like these. Do you see how important it can be to be on time? I am not saying that there aren't any extenuating circumstances, because things do happen, but when a pattern of lateness develops, it will cause problems for you. In the spring of 2019 I left my house early for a gig in Apollo Beach, which is a town on the east side of Tampa, a little more than an hour from me. I wanted to arrive at 6 p.m., so I chose to leave at 4:30. I thought this would give me plenty of time to get there and not be in a hurry or fall behind. Boy, was I wrong. I encountered heavy traffic on the 275 to I-4 highway interchange. This was a part of the trip I was very used to. But once I was on 275, traffic slowed to a crawl for an accident and everyone had to be funneled down into one lane. This took a while, and I was aware that I was starting to fall behind schedule. The flow of cars finally picked back up, and as I merged onto I-4 I moved into the left lane to take the Selman Expressway. I decided to get off at an exit I had never used before, because I knew the traffic on I-75 at this hour would be bad and backed up at the exit I wanted to take. I drove onto Route 41 and headed south. That was when I encountered a construction zone and was once again directed to merge into a single lane. After getting through the construction zone, I felt like I was making up time and finally moving steadily down the road. That is, until the railroad track signs lit up and the crossbars came down. I actually laughed out loud. I was at the front of the line of cars and would be the first to go after the train had gone through. I decided to time this event. At the point where I could see the train coming to an end, it stopped. It paused. And then it started to back up. The train did this a few times. I am guessing that they were adding cars to the end. Finally, after 12.5 minutes, the train moved on. I arrived at my gig at 6:16 p.m., after a 1 hour and 46-minute drive. I gave myself a buffer by leaving early, and arrived later than I wanted to, but I started on time. The gig went great. I made lots of tips. I drove home safely and it only took me 45 minutes to get back. To recap, it is very important to always be on time. I will not stop making it one of my priorities when it comes to my gigs or my lifestyle. As a solo acoustic musician, I hope you choose to carry the torch and always be on time. SoloAcousticMusician.com